Hey everyone, it's Jim
and Charles
from Mellow amps, and it's time to finish the prep, and we're going to do a couple of little jobs, starting with the switch mode power supply, the SMPS DC jack. We're going to take the positive center terminal, and we're going to bring a wire over here to the double pole single throw. So that is a DP-ST switch. So it's going to go right here.
And just for reference, this is already one of the built units. We're just showing you how it's going to look at the end.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, in the final production version, we moved the switch a little bit further to the rear. So there's going to be a little bit more room here. It's a little tight, but it's not impossible. And if we're a little tight back here, that leaves a lot of good room for important parts of the circuit that need to be as far away from the power supply as possible. There's also the negative of the SMPS right here, and that will just get a bare wire that will allow us to come down so that we can connect up to this junction right here. And we're also going to wire the hot side of the IEC down to the switch. It's hard to see, but it's the lower connection here. Now we're going to show it all in detail as we do it, so no fear, it'll all become clear. Okay, let's get going. Okay, now it's going to be slightly different than the prototype build. So we're going to go ahead and grab your 18 gauge red hookup wire, make up two little lengths of shrink. One's going to be a little longer. We're going to need something a little bit longer to do this cleanly. And let's start by making the ring terminal up, and we've got a nice big barrel on this thing. So let me just grab my crimper. So go ahead and load it in the 1.5. We're going to actually turn this back. Just getting started for the day, so you can see we're not 100% on our game, but I promise you in a minute we will be. Okay, so just get that crimp started and slide your turn back in. That turn back just gives us more meat to crimp to. And as always, poke a little bit of your wire through because it'll tend to shrink. So I got one crimp on, I'm going to bring the crimper back, and now I've got a really nice crimp all the way along the barrel. Do a little tug test. I'm going to put a small piece of shrink on that. Okay, go ahead and get that shrunk and I'll see you back. Okay, so let's get ready to size this up. Before I forget, take a look at your switch. Now, this is the bottom of the chassis right here, and facing down there's a groove in the switch barrel. So it's hard to see because there's a little bit of light glare, but it's right there's the groove right there. Just make sure you have it in the correct orientation. Okay, so we're going to size in place. So just imagine it's sitting right here. So it's really a short piece of wire. Now we're going to double it. So let's make sure we bring it back just a tiny little bit extra for the double. And that's going to leave us just enough wire to do the next job. Okay, let's see how that goes. It's going to be good. I'm going to do a little turn back here. You don't need much.
Now this can be a bit of a tricky soldering job here. It's helpful if you have somebody that can hold the wire in place while you do it. You can also take this entire assembly and rotate it on its side so that it's easier to actually get in there and have it sort of sit in the channel.
Yeah, and I think the shrink is just a little long for the job, so we're going to trim it back a little bit. It should line up so that it's roughly where that hard turn is going to be. So let's just like that should be good. Okay, so let's preload that. Now, let's just see if we can get in a better spot. So it's a little hard to see, I think, but let's get that out of the road. There we go. So the barrel, for us anyways, the barrel is open here. So what we want to do is get in there, get a nice little bit of flux in there, not too much, won't take much.
Yeah, this should be a very easy solder. You shouldn't need too much and you shouldn't need to be on there for too long.
Now I'm going to show you a little trick as to how this is done. So what we want to do is, let me get you back on camera, sorry folks.
It's always fun trying to show these tricky jobs.
It's awkward. Okay, and I'm going to put a little drop of flux.
And we're just going to move this just a little bit over there.
So I'm just going to do a light tinning.
1 second, folks. We'll be right back. I'm just going to switch this over to manual focus so you can really see this. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so I've got a light tinning on here, and I'm going to preload some solder into the barrel. So I think we're going to bring the temperature up a little bit because that's a fairly big chunk of metal. So let's bring it up to 370 C, which is about 690 Fahrenheit. And we're just going to come in and under the barrel, and we're just going to load some solder in there. Okay. And now we're just going to bring the pre-tinned piece of wire right into the recess of the center post. We're going to set it down, fit it in place, and it's slightly fussy, but now hold it while it sets, and you should have a really nice, good fill. It looks a little awkward, more awkward than it is. Now that shrink's probably going to start to try to close up, so let's scoot it on there before we lose it.
And go ahead and shrink that down, and we'll see you back in a second.
Okay, so this is what's left for our 18 gauge red wire. We're actually a little tight because we changed up the build slightly. So if you're a test builder, you're going to have just enough wire, so don't waste your wire. But for future builders, we'll increase the BOM, increase the parts list. So it's about 50 millimeters or
just a little touch over 2 inches.
Yeah, but you know, don't stress. That's actually going to be a little bit more than we need, but it'll work out just fine. And
one quick warning here. So we just shrunk this piece of shrink down here on the DC jack, and you want to be careful whenever you're using a heat gun now anywhere around these corner blocks. They are 3D printed plastic. They're a very heat resistant 3D printed plastic, but they won't survive, you know, 300 or 400 or 500 degrees off of a heat gun for very long. So don't come in on an angle like this towards it. Come down in this direction, and try not to get too much heat on these.
Okay, back to your regularly scheduled program. Okay, so go ahead and make a little turn back. Actually, that's not a big enough piece of strip, so let's smarten up and
strip back just a bit more.
Yeah, When you're building, it always pays to stop when you think, wait a minute, is this right? And the answer...
Especially before you crimp something.
Yeah. When we were sailing long distance, we always had a rule. If you think you should be doing something, you should always already be doing it. And when it comes to building, you should have a rule. If you think maybe I should do this differently, well, you should already be doing it differently. So,
same for safety. If you think you should be wearing your safety glasses, you should be wearing them.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a nice crimp on this end. Go ahead and put a piece of shrink on it, and I'll see you back in a minute. Okay, there's our little length of hookup wire. So let's preload the shrink. It's just a little bit longer than normal because we're going to be coming on to this terminal right here. So I want to come in like this, I think. Now, what you want to do is make just a small turn. So you can use a spudger or you can use needle nose. I like spudger because it's got a nice big flat on it. And you can just come in here and you just want to make a little turn back, just sort of a hook. And I'm pressing it down with my fingers. You could use the pliers as well. And that's looking pretty good. And it's actually headed down in this direction. So something like that, I think just like that is going to be really good. It's going to be tricky to get this on camera. Now, you haven't loaded a fuse in your IEC, but if you have, unload it because it's going to be connected up to this and you really don't want to put a lot of heat on a fuse. So we're still at 370 C, which is 690 Fahrenheit, and that should be good, I think. So let's preload a little solder on our...
Try not to stay on it too long because we don't want to accidentally shrink down the piece of shrink that's going to go over it. Though it is a bit of a bigger tab to solder to.
Yeah, and let's see how the solder takes. It's actually going pretty good, and that's it. Okay. So you really want to have a nice little bit of fill. Okay, so when we first showed this connection, you may have seen that I had it drop down. You don't really want to do it that way because the shrink just won't fit on. And you should be using your larger size of shrink, not, I think I had the smaller piece on earlier. So just fit it over like that. That's going to work out much, much better. And then we'll just make the turn like this and it'll work out perfectly. Okay, so go ahead and get that shrunk on and I'll see you back. Okay, so go ahead and grab a length of your yellow-green wire. It's about 3.5 inches long. And that works out to pretty close to 90 millimeters. Okay, and the first job is going to be getting a little tinned lead onto the end here.
So this is going to be the ground wire for the DC switch mode. That's going into one of the blue junctions.
So we will cut it just a little bit, strip it just a little bit long so that we can cut back our tinning. So this is just your standard tinning job. So we're going to turn our iron all the way down to 350 C, which is 660 Fahrenheit. I'm going to put a little dab of flux on it.
And I'm going to be nice enough to hold it here, although you can use a set of helping hands or a real set of helping hands if you have them around.
And notice how I'm moving fairly quickly with the iron. You really don't want to put too much heat because the tinning just won't take. And that's looking just beautiful. Okay. And you can go ahead and bring it over to your PCB. There's a blue junction on it, and just check the fit on the blue junction. It's going to be something like this. And that should be good. And make sure it's a nice clean entrance so it doesn't get stuck in there. There we go. And the other end is going to go on to a ring terminal.
This one right here.
Yeah, it's not going on a ring terminal.
It's on a tab.
It's going on a tab. I got ring terminals on the brain. And go ahead and grab a little bit of black shrink, and I'll see you back in a minute. Okay, so earlier we bent the tab off a little bit. If it's not off enough, just give it a little bend. It looks like that.
Don't wiggle it back and forth, just one bend.
And we want a little longer shrink, but even this is probably a little bit too long. So just size it to the tab. You want it actually a little longer, so that it'll cover up the wire and bind everything together, and that looks perfect. Okay, so
this can be a little bit of a tricky job, so we're going to try and come in from the underside and go through the hole.
And before, actually we don't need to put the shrink on because we have an open end. And there we go. And watch for stray wires as you do this. So I'm going through about halfway, and I'm going to make a turn. Just like that. And it's going down, but to get that shrink on and not get into trouble like we did just a minute ago, we're actually going to just prop it up a little bit. Just for now, and then we'll bend it down when it's time to put it in. So we need a little bit of flux. We're going to probably come in around our standard temperature, around 360 C, which is 680 Fahrenheit. And my iron is starting to look a little dirty, so how about we clean up the tip? Ah, that's much better. A little bit of solder. And you can always grab that wire and just pull it so that it's nice, and you want to make sure you got solder filling the connection of the tab to the wire. And you can go ahead and give it a little tug test, and that looks really nice. So let's slip on our shrink before we forget. There we go. Okay, go ahead and get that shrunk, and I'll see you back.